In a stunning turn of events, Donald Trump has won the 2024 U.S. presidential election, marking a historic return to power after a tumultuous and fiercely contested campaign. Kamala Harris, who had sought to extend Democratic leadership in the White House, conceded defeat, highlighting the nation's resilience and emphasizing her commitment to a peaceful transfer of power. Harris's concession speech resonated with themes of unity and determination, aiming to preserve American ideals despite the political divisions that marked the election cycle. The world is watching with keen interest as the ramifications of Trump's win begin to reverberate across various sectors. His presidency has prompted a wave of responses from global leaders, markets, and international institutions, all adjusting to the new political landscape. Notably, key Asian leaders, such as Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, have moved swiftly to initiate talks with the incoming Trump administration. Ishiba announced plans to hold a face-to-face meeting with Trump after the upcoming G20 summit in Brazil on November 18 to 19. Citing critical security and economic discussions on the agenda, the meeting highlights Japan's commitment to stabilizing U.S.-Japan relations amid intensifying tensions in the Asia-Pacific region, especially with China's growing influence and North Korea's recent escalations. South Korea, too, is recalibrating its stance on military aid, particularly concerning Ukraine, following reports that North Korea has sent troops to Russia in support of the ongoing conflict. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol announced that his administration is re-evaluating its long-standing policy of refraining from supplying weapons to active war zones. The decision underscores a broader shift in South Korea's foreign policy, prompted by the evolving security environment in East Asia and the pressing need to support allies in the face of rising threats. In the Middle East, tensions have erupted following Israeli airstrikes on Hezbollah positions in southern Beirut. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, launched strikes near Lebanon's international airport, targeting Hezbollah installations allegedly responsible for attacks on Israeli infrastructure. Despite the conflict, the Beirut airport remains operational, with Middle East airlines resuming flights amid tight security. The renewed hostilities have intensified concerns over the region's stability, prompting diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation as the U.S. prepares to recalibrate its foreign policy under Trump's leadership. Meanwhile, Europe faces its own political challenges. In Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz has dismissed Finance Minister Christian Lindner, effectively dismantling the coalition government. Scholz has announced plans to seek a confidence vote in January, a critical moment that could lead to early elections and a reshaping of Germany's political landscape. The disagreement arose over Lindner's refusal to suspend the country's constitutional debt ceiling, a move he argued was necessary to protect Germany's fiscal health amidst mounting economic pressures. The crisis in Germany underscores the political and economic ripple effects that Trump's victory may trigger in European nations, as they brace for potential shifts in US-EU relations. On the other side of the globe, Australia has made headlines with a landmark social media regulation that aims to ban users under 16 from accessing social platforms. The proposed legislation, expected to pass by year's end, reflects growing concerns over the impact of social media on youth, including privacy and mental health risks. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese emphasized that the measure aims to protect vulnerable young people, with enforcement mechanisms being developed to ensure compliance. The policy positions Australia at the forefront of the global debate on digital safety and government regulation in the technology sector. Europe has also seen unprecedented actions in the battle against organized crime, as Spanish authorities seized a record-breaking 13 metric tons of cocaine hidden in a shipment of bananas from Ecuador. The seizure, one of the largest in Spanish history, was the result of a collaborative effort between Spanish and Ecuadorian law enforcement. Police arrested a woman linked to the importing company and continue to search for 2 other suspects. This operation highlights the growing cooperation between European and Latin American countries in tackling cross-continental drug trafficking networks. In Thailand, Bangkok's criminal court has acquitted Sunan Zan, a woman accused of aiding the suspects in the 2015 Erawan shrine bombing, which claimed the lives of 20 individuals, including numerous foreign tourists. Prosecutors had argued that Zan rented an apartment to the bombers, who allegedly stored explosives there. Her acquittal has brought relief to Zan's supporters, though it has reignited public debate over justice and accountability for the tragic event. In the US, California has issued an urgent warning as wildfires, fueled by powerful winds, continue to rage across the state. Thousands have been evacuated as flames destroyed residential areas, with erratic winds preventing firefighters from fully containing the blazes. The National Weather Service has issued a life-threatening red flag warning, while state officials have urged residents in high-risk zones to remain vigilant. The fires serve as a sobering reminder of California's ongoing struggle with climate change and the urgent need for disaster preparedness. Environmental crises have become increasingly frequent, as highlighted by recent findings from the European Climate Agency, which projects that 2024 will likely be the hottest year on record. In Indonesia, Mount Laki erupted, spewing ash and prompting thousands of nearby residents to evacuate. Additionally, Hurricane Rafael has battered Cuba, resulting in widespread power outages across Havana and leaving the city in near total darkness. These extreme weather events underscore the urgent need for global cooperation to address climate change and build resilience against natural disasters. In the technology sector, Canada has taken unprecedented action by ordering TikTok to cease operations within its borders due to concerns over national security and user data privacy. Although Canadians can still access the app for now, the government's stance reflects mounting global scrutiny of Chinese-owned technology companies. Canada's decision follows similar moves by other nations to curb the influence of foreign technology companies perceived as potential security risks. Data privacy concerns continue to dominate discussions in South Korea as well. The nation's regulators have fined Meta, Facebook's parent company, approximately $15 million for sharing users' data with advertisers without consent. The fine, one of the largest imposed on a tech company in South Korea, affects nearly 1 million users and highlights the increasing demand for transparency and accountability from global tech giants operating in the country. On the economic front, Trump's election has triggered swift responses in global markets. In a bid to get ahead of anticipated trade barriers, Chinese exporters saw a sharp increase in shipments to the US and EU, boosting exports by 12.7% year-over-year in October. Economists suggest that this surge is largely driven by Chinese manufacturers' efforts to avoid potential tariffs from Trump's administration, as well as from heightened economic scrutiny in Europe. The Philippine economy, meanwhile, is facing a slowdown as GDP growth fell to 5.2%, its lowest in over a year. Experts attribute the decline to weather-related disruptions in agriculture and softened export demand. In response, the Philippine Central Bank may consider interest rate cuts to stimulate growth in the coming months, with inflation remaining a top concern for policymakers. Financial markets have reacted swiftly to Trump's victory, with gold prices declining as the dollar strengthened. Oil prices have surged, reflecting concerns that Trump's return could prompt renewed U.S. sanctions on Iran, affecting global oil supply. The Indian rupee, however, has faced downward pressure, prompting analysts to predict that India's central bank may soon intervene to stabilize the currency, as the global community braces for Trump's renewed influence on the world stage. Leaders across continents are recalibrating policies, addressing security concerns, and implementing economic safeguards. With shifting alliances, trade uncertainties, and heightened diplomatic tensions, Trump's return to the White House marks the beginning of a new geopolitical era that will shape international relations and redefine global stability for years to come. As the dust settles from the U.S. election and Donald Trump emerges victorious, many Palestinians in Gaza are clinging to the hope that the former president can help bring an end to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. This war, which erupted on October 7, 2023, following a deadly Hamas attack, has taken an appalling toll on the Gaza Strip, leaving it in ruins. The human cost has been staggering. Entire families have been displaced, their homes reduced to rubble, while hunger, death, and injury have become daily realities. Hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed, struggling to provide care amidst the continuous bombings and shortages of supplies, with more than 43,000 deaths in Gaza alone, the majority of them civilians. Many survivors are left asking, will the war ever end? Among them is 60-year-old Mamdouh al-Jadba, who was displaced from his home in Jabalia and now lives in Gaza City. We were displaced, killed, there's nothing left for us. We want peace, he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. Al-Jadba, who has lost his home and seen his children left homeless in the southern part of Gaza, believes that Trump, a leader known for his strong, decisive approach, could be the one to end the war. I hope Trump finds a solution. We need someone strong like him to end the war and save us. Enough. God, this is enough, he pleaded. Similarly, Ahmed Harb, a woman from the Al-Shaf area of Gaza, voiced her despair and hope for Trump's intervention. God willing, the war will end, not for our sake, but for the sake of our young children who are innocent. They were martyred and are dying of hunger. She said, we cannot buy anything with the high prices of food. We are here in fear, terror, and death. Despite the overwhelming suffering in Gaza, the victory of Donald Trump in the U.S. presidential election is not met with universal hope across Palestine. For many Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank, where violence has also surged since last year, Trump's return to power is seen with skepticism and fear. In Ramallah, 60-year-old Samir Abu Jundi expressed concern that Trump's policies would further strengthen Israel's position. Trump is firm in some decisions, but these decisions could serve Israel's interests politically more than they serve the Palestinian cause. He said, others, like Abu Muhammad, a Palestinian from East Jerusalem, share a more cynical view. Nothing will change except more decline. He remarked, all U.S. presidents are in favor of the state of Israel. He added, referring to the long-standing support the United States has provided Israel, both politically and militarily. Throughout his first term, Trump made several moves that greatly impacted Palestinian-Israeli relations, including recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moving the U.S. embassy there. He also backed Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights and played a key role in facilitating the normalization of relations between Israel and several Arab states under the Abraham Accords. For Palestinians, these actions were seen as direct blows to their aspirations for statehood and sovereignty, causing widespread anger and disappointment. The Gaza conflict, which has now stretched into over a year of fighting, has led to the deaths of over 43,000 people in Gaza, most of them civilians. The conflict, which started with the Hamas attack on Israel, has continued to escalate despite calls for a ceasefire from various international actors, including the United States. The war's impact has left countless families grieving, and many, like Ibrahim Alian from Gaza City, are calling for an end to the bloodshed. Alian, who has been displaced multiple times, lost his father in the conflict. We expect peace to come and the war to end with Trump because in his election campaign he said that he wants peace and calls for stopping the wars on Gaza and the Middle East. He said, God willing, the war on the Gaza Strip will end, and the situation will change. He added, clinging to a slim hope that a new U.S. administration might bring peace. During his election campaign, Trump promised to put an end to international crises and declared that he could stop wars with a telephone call. His remarks on Gaza, in particular, resonated with those suffering in the region. Trump suggested that Gaza, located on the eastern Mediterranean, could be better than Monaco if handled correctly, and he reiterated his support for Israel's response to the October 7th attack. Get the job done, Trump urged, in what many in Gaza saw as an endorsement of Israel's military operations in the region. However, the international community remains divided on the issue. While some countries call for an immediate ceasefire, others are wary of further escalation, which could pull in additional regional players. Palestinians, particularly those in Gaza, are left in a state of uncertainty, unsure of what the future holds, as the war continues to rage, leaving thousands dead and millions displaced. The question remains, will Donald Trump, in his second term, intervene to end the suffering in Gaza, or will the cycle of violence continue to spiral out of control? Only time will tell. Palestinians in Gaza call for U.S. presidential winner to end conflict as region faces mounting crisis. By World War News Today. As Americans cast their ballots in a close presidential race, many in Gaza are expressing a dire appeal for the next U.S. president to work toward ending the war that has left their territory in ruins and countless families in despair. The prolonged conflict has inflicted staggering losses on Gaza, with thousands of lives lost, homes reduced to rubble, and a population yearning for stability and peace. Ayman al-Omraiti, a 45-year-old from Gaza City's Al-Daraj neighborhood, articulated the sentiment shared by many Palestinians. We are hanging by a thread, and like every other people in the world, we are looking for someone who can stop the war. He said, explaining that his hope lies in the American people's choice. Our hope is that the American people will choose someone who can end the suffering of the Palestinian people. For Omraiti, who has faced repeated displacement over the past 13 months since the conflict intensified. Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris's calls to end the war resonate. The Palestinian people are worried about a possible Trump victory, and we hope the results will be favorable for his opponent, Harris, because she has called for an end to the war several times. He explained, voicing concerns about the impact of a Trump administration's continued support for Israel. Others echo this desire for change, regardless of who takes office. Hani Adjur, a Gaza City resident, has lost both his son and brother in the war, with his home destroyed by Israeli shelling. For Adjur, ending the conflict is paramount. We hope that after all these sacrifices, whoever wins, whether it is Trump or Harris, will put an end to this war and bring peace to the region. He shared, we're just exhausted with the bombings, the destruction, the martyrs, the wounded, and the devastation. We're tired of this life. The sentiment in Gaza stands in contrast to recent Israeli polls showing broad support for Trump, who has been a vocal backer of Israel. In Israel's occupied Golan Heights, photographer Andy Alpern voiced support for Harris, believing she would continue to support Israel but may offer a more balanced approach. I don't think Kamala is as bad as everyone thinks she is. And she will do good things, said Alpern, adding that while Trump might allow more latitude, Harris might handle regional issues more thoughtfully. We hope the US will continue to support Israel to rid Lebanon of Hezbollah and Gaza of Hamas. He added, expressing Israel's concerns about regional threats. The conflict traces back to October 7, 2023, when Hamas launched a deadly attack on Israel, resulting in the deaths of 1,206 people, mostly civilians, as reported by Israeli officials. Israel's counteroffensive has resulted in significant casualties in Gaza, with more than 43,000 Palestinians killed, the majority of them civilians, according to figures from Gaza's health ministry, which are considered reliable by the United Nations, as both sides wait to see the outcome of the US election. Palestinians in Gaza hold onto a slim hope that the election's results could bring new possibilities for peace, and the end to their unrelenting suffering may finally be within reach. In breaking news, Israel has intensified its air campaign against Lebanon, with fresh airstrikes hitting Beirut's southern suburb of Dahieh just within the past hour. Known as a Hezbollah stronghold, Dahieh has faced a continuous onslaught since hostilities surged last month. The strike is part of a broader escalation as Israeli forces ramp up operations across Lebanon amid worsening regional tensions. Live footage from our team on the ground in Dahieh reveals extensive damage, with fires blazing across multiple buildings in the densely populated area. Heavy smoke continues to rise as emergency crews work to contain the fires and assist the injured. This bombing follows a full day of Israeli operations targeting both southern and eastern Lebanon, leading to widespread destruction and the reported deaths of at least 70 people. Among the affected areas is the Bekaa Valley in eastern Lebanon, where residents are now facing severe casualties and displacement. The Lebanese government has condemned Israel's actions, accusing it of disregarding recent diplomatic initiatives aimed at reducing hostilities. Lebanese officials are calling on the international community to intervene, warning of further devastation if the attacks persist. Hezbollah, which holds significant influence in Lebanon, has also responded, stating that it remains open to dialogue but only after the cessation of what it describes as ongoing Israeli aggression. Global responses to the escalating situation remain mixed. Some nations are pushing for an immediate ceasefire, while others caution against actions that could draw in more regional players. As the crisis deepens, civilians in Lebanon bear the brunt of the violence, with concerns mounting over a potential humanitarian crisis as displacement, injuries, and fatalities increase. In an alarming surge in hostilities, Israeli airstrikes killed at least 40 people near Baalbek in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley on Wednesday. As reported by Lebanon's health ministry, the strikes, which continued into the evening with multiple attacks on Beirut's southern suburbs, mark a stark escalation in Israel's long-running conflict with Hezbollah, which has intensified sharply since September. Israeli troops have stepped up operations across Lebanon, focusing on Hezbollah-controlled areas in the south and east, where they've reportedly launched ground incursions into border villages. In addition to the fatalities, 53 others were injured in Wednesday's attacks on Baalbek and Bekaa. The airstrikes have especially targeted Hezbollah's strongholds, including the densely populated southern suburbs of Beirut. where Israeli forces ordered an evacuation early Wednesday. Shortly after, 2 waves of bombings struck the area late that night and again early Thursday morning. Local Lebanese channel Al Jadid TV reported 4 additional strikes on Thursday, though specific casualties and targets remain unclear. Hezbollah's Secretary General Naim Qassem responded to the attacks on Wednesday, expressing doubt that diplomacy alone could end the conflict. However, Qassem did suggest that indirect negotiations could occur if Israel halted its aggression, with any potential discussions mediated through Lebanon's government and Speaker Nabi Berri. When the enemy decides to stop the aggression, there is a path for negotiations that we have clearly defined, Qassem stated. The United States had recently attempted to broker a ceasefire, proposing a 60-day halt to hostilities as the U.S. election approached. However, diplomatic efforts fell through just days before the election. Former President Donald Trump reclaimed the White House in Tuesday's vote, and the international community is now speculating on whether his administration might shift its approach to Middle Eastern conflicts. The past year has been devastating for Lebanon, with Israeli strikes claiming over 3,000 lives, the majority in the last 6 weeks alone. In Barja, a town south of Beirut, rescue teams continue searching through debris following a Tuesday night airstrike that killed 20 people. A resident, Musa Zaran, who was injured alongside his son and wife, returned to find his apartment in ruins, pointing to large chunks of rubble. Zaran emotionally recounted how heavy debris fell on his son during the bombing. On Wednesday, Hezbollah launched missiles at an Israeli military base near Ben Gurion Airport in retaliation. Israeli media reported that at least 1 projectile hit near the airport, while the Israeli military confirmed that dozens more rockets crossed the border from Lebanon, with some intercepted by Israeli defense systems. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has since appointed Israel Katz as the new defense minister, who vowed to defeat Hezbollah and enable displaced Israelis to return to their northern homes. Meanwhile, Hezbollah ally Speaker Nabi Berri met with the US and Saudi ambassadors in Beirut on Wednesday, though no specifics on their discussions were disclosed. Lebanon's caretaker prime minister also extended congratulations to the US president-elect, while Netanyahu celebrated Trump's re-election, and senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuhri remarked that Trump would soon be tested on his ability to end the Gaza conflict swiftly. Israel's military announced a bold escalation on Sunday, stating it will now target the financial backbone of Lebanon's Hezbollah, aiming to dismantle key funding sources. This shift follows months of escalating tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, a powerful Iran-backed organization based in Lebanon. The Israeli army stated they will attack a large number of targets linked to Al-Qiyad al-Hassan, Hezbollah's financial network, which funds militants and helps procure arms. Just an hour after the announcement, explosions were reported in Beirut's southern suburbs, signaling the start of Israel's intensified campaign. The airstrikes come amid widespread evacuation warnings issued for southern Beirut, Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley, and areas in southern Lebanon. Strikes have been confirmed near Lebanon's only airport, although it remains operational. Al-Qiyad al-Hassan, which also serves Lebanese civilians with financial services, is a registered non-profit, yet faces sanctions from the US and Saudi Arabia for its role in Hezbollah's activities. It's a big deal, noted David Asher, an expert in illicit financing, who predicts the strikes could destabilize Hezbollah's cash-based system. He warned that the cash will be trash if Israeli attacks continue. In response, Al-Qiyad al-Hassan issued a defiant statement, calling the strikes a sign of Israeli bankruptcy and assuring clients that it has implemented measures to protect their money. Yet panic gripped Beirut, with many residents evacuating areas near the organization's branches. An error in one Israeli evacuation notice for the suburb of Chufat mistakenly marked a target as Grand Cinema ABC Verdun, a theater in Beirut's upscale shopping district nearly 10 kilometers away. This added to the chaos as residents scrambled to assess the actual threats. This year-long feud between Israel and Hezbollah, exacerbated by the Gaza war, intensified last month as Israel sent ground troops into Lebanon, marking a significant shift in the conflict's scope. Just a day before Israel's latest announcement, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin called on Israel to ease strikes on civilian areas in Lebanon, citing far too high casualty rates. Lebanon's army, a widely respected institution but not powerful enough to counter Hezbollah or defend against Israeli incursions, reported that 3 of its soldiers were killed in an Israeli strike in southern Lebanon. While Israel confirmed it struck over 100 Hezbollah targets in the area, it did not comment on the deaths of the Lebanese soldiers. In response, Hezbollah fired over 170 rockets into Israel, with Israel's Magen David Adom Rescue Service reporting 3 minor injuries from fires sparked by a rocket in the northern city of Saft. In southern Lebanon, UN peacekeeping forces, known as UNIFIL, reported that Israeli troops deliberately demolished a UN observation tower and surrounding fence, defying pressure to leave the region. Adding to the complexity, the US is investigating the release of classified documents indicating Israel may have positioned military assets in response to a recent Iranian ballistic missile attack on October 1. Meanwhile, calls from the US for a Gaza ceasefire have gone largely unheeded. Israel has launched intense airstrikes across Gaza, killing over 42,000 Palestinians. According to Gaza's health authorities, the relentless assault has left northern Gaza in ruins and displaced nearly 90% of its population of 2.3 million. Amid rising calls for restraint, UN peacekeepers and diplomats are facing challenges mediating an end to the hostilities as Hezbollah and Israel continue their cross-border attacks. Stay tuned here at World War News Today for the latest as these tensions unfold across the Middle East. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell for ongoing updates on global conflicts.